Hello and welcome to the Mild Opinion Podcast, episode 11. I am Logan.
And I'm Luke.
And today we're going to be discussing your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Yes. And we usually when we talk about like Marvel stuff, we'll focus on it from like a sort of broader perspective, but today we're just focusing on Spider-Man because there's a lot of I guess like a lot of irons on the fire right now with upcoming projects. So we're gonna start today with talking about something that's kind of like starting to see a little bit more about is Spider-Noir on Prime Video with Nicolas Cage. I guess reprising his role because if you didn't know, he plays Spider-Man Noir in the animated Into the Spider-Verse movies, and this is his live-action debut. And he will be the fourth live-action Spider-Man character or live-action Peter Parker, which is very interesting, and I think it looks very cool and unique.
Yeah, I've heard rumors and stuff about, the live-action Spider-Noir and all that being thrown around for a long time, and then they confirmed it, and I was like, there's no way. And then they confirmed everything with, like, Nicolas Cage and everything, and I was like, this is, like, the craziest thing. Because I never would have imagined that we would have gotten a Spider-Noir, you know what I mean? And then it being pretty much the same as the Spider-Noir from the Spider-Verse and everything like that.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of interesting with it being, like, a Prime show and stuff like that, which, Prime does fairly well, stuff like that, especially because
stuff, yeah.
with like the boys and everything like that, like and like Invincible and like just like the darker superhero stuff, which I can only imagine that this will be because Spider-Noir is a dark character. His backstory and stuff in the comics is kind of dark as well, so I'm hoping that they do really well with it, which I think they should.
I think they will too, and I don't know the most in general about Spider-Noir and like the differentiations of his character to like your classic Spider-Man comic books. I know it's generally a much darker tone and a much more serious universe of Spider-Man, so I know his motives are from more of a like I think it's like more of a morally gray thing because he like doesn't use guns and whatnot. I know that his villains tend to be a little bit more dark and twisted than their regular versions. Like, for instance, I know that Vulture has a reputation of being, I think, cannibalistic in it. So, if that's any indication of what the rest of the villains turn into, it's a lot scarier to look at Spider-Man. And I think it looks interesting that they're actually sticking with like the noir style, which I guess is to be expected, but like the black and white and kind of looks like it's going to be detective action kind of stuff, which I think will be very cool. And of course it's Nicolas Cage, which is just like, wow, that's going to be really cool.
Yeah, well, and I hope that as much as I want it to be like, superhero, different kind of like Spider-Man and everything else, I also do hope that they go into a lot of it with like the like detective stuff and all that, because that's like a big part of Spider-Man Noir's style. So I really hope that they do pull that as well, which I'm assuming they would. That's like a big basis on, like a big foundation of his character.
Yeah, and this also like it makes me curious as to where this will land. I don't know if this is a Sony production either, like through Prime Video.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it'll be interesting to see since like Sony sometimes is back and forth with the MCU, Marvel, Disney stuff, and that's always kind of up in the air where it lands. But now that we're into this era of like all the multiverse characters through Spider-Man and stuff, and we've seen Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield come through, and then if you've seen the Spider-Verse movies, you know that there's quite a lot more opportunity for different versions of Spider-Man to show up. So I'm just curious to see like where this will land in that, if they're wanting it to be like kind of its own standalone thing, or if this will leave the door open for opportunity for not only Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire to come back, because that's still in the air ever since No Way Home, but also like will Nicolas Cage now be thrown into this mix of live action Spider-Man who might meet the other ones?
Yeah.
I think that's just it's an interesting thought. I don't really prefer it either way. Like, I could see it being just a standalone thing, and I think I'd be okay with that. If they were to bring him into the larger fold of things, I would hope that they do it in a natural way.
Yeah.
And hopefully, if that is the case, then that's not like the whole point of the show. Like, if they set that up, fine, but I don't want that to be a huge takeaway of it.
Yeah. I'm kind of there as well.
Yeah.
I think that I don't really know if I would want him to be like involved in the other stuff, just because he's so cool, like in his own element, his own like world and stuff like that as a character, and I feel like taking him out of that in a way that was like him interacting with like other MCU characters and stuff like that, I don't really know if it would work quite as well.
Yeah.
Because like they've done it with the Spider-Verse movies and stuff, which he's fine in those, but that's, where we met him film-wise for the first time and all that.
Yeah.
But also those are, cartoony and whatever, animated, which they're great movies, but I think like in that he's like fine and he works really well, but I don't necessarily know if I want to see him be taken out of his element in his own live action show to be put in with a bunch of other heroes and stuff. I don't know how well that would go over, I guess.
Yeah. And I guess with that, the farthest I'd ever wanted to go would be him interacting with the other Spider-Men and their villains. I wouldn't want him to be like here's Sam Wilson's Captain America, only has Spider-Noir to rely on in their final fight against Doctor Doom. But yeah, this will be an interesting show, and we've only recently gotten our first legitimate tease of it, which didn't show a whole lot, but it kind of gave you an idea of the style and design of it, and it looks very interesting, and it'll be definitely something different from anything Spider-Man we've seen before. So yeah. I think it looks very cool.
Jumping from that, I guess we can progress to the Spider-Verse stuff.
Yep. So, as of right now, there's Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse are the two animated movies that are out in that Miles Morales animated storyline.
Yep.
And as of right now, we're currently slated for the third movie in that franchise, which is Beyond the Spider-Verse, to release in June of 2027. And this movie's already been like delayed a lot because I think it was supposed to come out in like 2024.
Yeah.
I don't know if I remember that right.
I think maybe like late 2024.
Yeah.
And then it got pushed back to, well, it was supposed to be out now, I guess. Mm. And then they got way pushed back because of some drama with the cast.
So,
and
I mean, with this movie, it does hurt a little bit that it's not slated to come out for over 2 years from right now. Especially, like, since when we saw Across the Spider-Verse in theaters together, and it was awesome, like hands down. There's not really a whole lot of negative you could say about it, other than unless you're going into like the wait for the next one being a while, but like the whole setup with Spot as the big bad of everything going on, and I was a big fan of just the story they set up of like he has to either like make the sacrifice of like allowing his father to be the canon event, or like basically put the whole multiverse at a risk. And I think that's just a very interesting thing to see all these Spider-Men be like, we have to, which I thought was kind of odd while I was watching it, but as I've continued, I'm like, yeah, because like we saw what happened when you try and not allow this, and it's very, very unpleasant. So
yeah,
it
is very unfortunate that we have to wait for 2 years. And I think at first, because essentially the new one is going to be a part 2 of Across the Spider-Verse, because sequels and whatnot, they're all kind of, different parts of the same story, whatever. But like Into the Spider-Verse was, a different storyline than what we had with Across the Spider-Verse and all that. But, like, with the way that they ended that, this is, like, the same story. It's not complete. Like, so having to wait for, what will it be by then? 4 years?
I think so, yeah.
With having to wait 4 years to get the, conclusion to the story that we already know and have seen. I mean, there's obviously more to go on.
Yeah.
But, like, we were left on a cliffhanger. So I think making us wait 4 years because of everything that's gone on definitely kind of hurts it a little bit. But they do such a good job with those movies that I'm sure that unless something terrible happens, it will be worth the wait.
Yeah. And, we've talked a lot before about, especially in our last episode, we talked about how it really is upsetting when a movie gets a lot of delays and, like, we're sitting here left wondering what's going on and, like, if it'll be delayed again. But with this, I feel like it's more understandable because with these movies, just in general, the amount of time it takes for an animated movie, these series of movies have such specific artistic styles, and especially after last movie, seeing all the different Spider-Men with their own art styles and, like, everybody's drawn by different studios and whatnot. It's a huge collaboration, and when you go down that rabbit hole and see how specific it is, like, I think the biggest shock about that thought process is, like, when you watch Across the Spider-Verse, you get introduced to the rock and roll Spider-Man, what's it called?
Spider-Punk.
Yeah, you get introduced to Spider-Punk, and then we found out afterwards that his character moves at a different frame rate than all of the other characters in the whole thing. So just all these little specific details, like different art styles and how many little different significant changes that each of these characters have from one to the next, it really puts into perspective how much work goes into that. And after seeing Across the Spider-Verse and how smooth it all looks when it's put together, it definitely adds a little bit of understanding and appreciation for the time that they're putting in to make it sure that this last movie at least looks good. And hopefully the story will be just as good.
Yeah, and with that as well, I think, putting that time into it and making it like that is definitely worth the effort and worth the wait for, like, us as, like, fans and stuff. Because I've thought about that before when the other two movies have come out before. If these movies did not have that, like, unique art style with the different characters and stuff, and it was all just, like, one flat animated, they're all animated the same, it looks like this, whatever, it would not have near the charm. It wouldn't. I just don't think they would hit the same as if they were all, like, in the same animation style and all that. Like, if the animation was more toned down so they could pump it out quicker, I feel like the movies would not be nearly as good. I think that's part of it that makes them so great.
True.
Which, the characters and the storytelling and all that's also fantastic. But that animation, like the unique details and stuff, that's, like, a big part of it. And I feel like on that end, it is definitely worth the wait.
Sure.
But,
And without going too much further on the Spider-Verse stuff to avoid keep harping on it, I really, really liked that when Across the Spider-Verse was announced, they announced that the Spot was going to be the main villain in it. And this was a character where I feel like I didn't, and a lot of people didn't really know much about Spot, but as you look into him, you find out he's not really, like, a major villain for Spider-Man in a lot of aspects. But then Across the Spider-Verse comes out and they are very aware of this, so they, like, have a lot of fun with it. But they also flesh out his character so much, and they set him up to be not just, like, a weak Spider-Man villain, but now probably will be one of the most, if not the most powerful Spider-Man villain that we've ever seen on screen when it comes to Beyond the Spider-Verse. And I already think, like, the way they set him up in the first one, Miles Morales sees that Spot's going to not only be the one who kills his father, but also it looks like he's destroying an entire city, and he's a huge threat to, like, every Spider-Man in that. So I'm very impressed with that, and I hope they really stick the landing of like owning up to that setup that they gave him in Across the Spider-Verse, because I thought it was so well done.
Yep. So now, I think from there, what do you want to do next?
I think from there we'll jump over to the MCU Spider-Man Tom Holland stuff, which is still very early in like rumors and development of it, but we know that the next movie is called Spider-Man Brand New Day. It's currently set for a July 31st of 2026 release date, and it's been, I think, since 2021 is when No Way Home came out.
Yeah, I would believe so.
Yeah, so it's already been almost 4 years in the making since we've seen Tom Holland's Spider-Man last. And this movie will be coming out after Avengers Doomsday. So a lot of the thoughts, that a lot of the rumors and such that I've been seeing about it is like, you know, with the Avengers Doomsday casting announcements and everything, Tom Holland, plus a lot of other Marvel actors are noticeably absent at the moment from this cast list. But Tom Holland is not on the cast list for this, and one of the things I've heard is that it could be like an Ant-Man and the Wasp situation between Infinity War and Endgame, where it's going to be the events of Spider-Man Brand New Day are going to take place at the same time as whatever's going on in Avengers Doomsday, or at least with an explanation of why Spider-Man was not in the Avengers. So I assume then we'll see him in Secret Wars. But I'm very curious to see how they're going to jump back into Spider-Man, because it seems like it's going to have to be a bit of a soft reboot, because now everything that happened in the MCU up until No Way Home, everybody knew who Spider-Man was. Well, a lot of people found out who he was, and then after the events of that movie, everybody forgets. His Aunt May died, his girlfriend and best friend don't remember who he is anymore. He's completely on his own now, so I think I'm very curious to see how we jump back into Tom Holland.
Yeah, and I think, for me at least, him not being in, well, if he's actually not in Doomsday, I would be fine with that, especially because, you know, like you just said, we ended off with, like, no one remembering it, but, you know, there's all these terrible things about his character and everything, like, no one knows who he is, his family's dead, and all that. I don't want him to just pop back up and then just be like a hero in this show, or not show, but movie, with all these other heroes just doing the regular Spider-Man thing. Because, like, the last time we saw him, he's not in a place to just go off and do regular Spider-Man stuff. Like, there's more that we need to know about it before I want to see him just fighting, you know, a big bad with 30 other Avengers. Like, I love that, and I want that to happen again, but I don't necessarily know if Doomsday would be the appropriate time, because
the right reintroduction to
yeah, exactly. Because like, I feel like with Brand New Day, they will go into, like, that will be like a big part of it, is him finding himself again, you know, figuring out where to go from where he left off and all that,
and really like dealing with a lot of the stuff that he's been through.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, at least since the last time we've seen him.
Yeah. And I feel like in a movie like Doomsday, there's so many characters, there's going to be so much going on that they won't have any time to explain that.
Yeah.
So I don't want it to be one of those things where they're like, oh yeah, like they're gonna like Spider-Man in this, throw him in there, and then they'll be like, yeah, you'll see what happened in his movie. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want that. I would rather them just leave him out of it for now, and then we'll see him in Secret Wars or whatever with everybody else.
And to capitalize on that too, like, Spider-Man is a character right now that I feel like, because of how long he's at this point been in the MCU, and I feel like Tom Holland now has grown on the audience enough to be like, people not like him more or less than Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire, but at least he's in the conversation of like, it's okay if you think he's like the best Spider-Man or whatever.
Yeah.
I think just Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man, at least how far he's come, deserves the full time to be fleshed out. Also, just with Spider-Man being like one of, if not the most popular superheroes of all time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I really don't think they should take his reintroduction lightly, and to go into some more rumored things that, or like just ideas floating around about what could be the plot of Brand New Day. But to preface before that, there's been quite a few projects now since we have seen him. Several of them have taken place in New York. We know that, at least at this point in time, it doesn't seem Spider-Man is in the conversation of being an Avenger at this moment in time where we are in the MCU. And the most we have had about Spider-Man in the MCU in the past almost 4 years is in Daredevil Born Again. Kingpin makes an offhanded comment about a spider vigilante, and that was it. So I hope, I like that they're taking their time before Brand New Day to make sure that they have a good story and that it'll live up to what Spider-Man should be. But I hope they give some context as to, like, where has he been, because there's now been Born Again, which, if you've seen it, there is a citywide crisis and blackout, and now there's vigilantes are full-on outlaws in New York City. And in the Thunderbolts now, we have now seen them go through almost a very catastrophic and super powerful event. So I guess the big question I have going into Brand New Day is, like, are they going to address what Spider-Man was doing during these things? Like, was he helping somewhere we didn't see it, or are they just going to jump right back into, all right, here's Spider-Man and here's the story,
Yeah, I think that would be interesting because I feel like they don't necessarily have to explain that stuff, but it would kind of be nice, just like, even if it's just something small, like, oh yeah, he was, just being low key, not even doing like Spider-Man stuff, just helping people, because nobody knows who he is now. So, I mean, he could just be helping people as like a random guy on the street too, you know what I mean? Just doing whatever. But, yeah, I think at least some sort of explanation would be nice. They don't even have to put like a lot of focus on it. I feel like that'd just be a thing that like a lot of people are wondering now.
Mm-hmm. It's just been very noticeable of, like, there's a lot of these things where it seems like Spider-Man should be there, even though it's not his project, and it would kind of take the point away. Just in an in-universe context, it's like, where was he during this? But yeah, some more things I wanted to touch on is just some lingering things about Spider-Man. We know that the Vulture is still out there.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Scorpion had a setup way back in Spider-Man Homecoming that has not turned into anything yet.
Mm-hmm.
Kingpin now has a vendetta against vigilantes in New York, and, in comic book capacities and everything, Spider-Man and Kingpin are basically as much of hero versus villain as Daredevil and Kingpin. Spider-Man has his foot in the door with interacting with Daredevil because we see him in No Way Home. And there's the question of the Venom symbiote still out there, because there's the remainder of it, which is in the MCU, even though Venom's storyline has allegedly been wrapped up on the Sony side of things. So something I think just would be interesting, at least in regards to that, is with Spider-Man going through so much in No Way Home and now being all on his own, he's probably going to come back in a very vulnerable manner, which I think would be a very interesting time for, if they're going to do the Venom symbiote with that Spider-Man, it would be probably an ideal time for it.
Yeah, I agree.
The big thing is, though, is every other week it seems like we get a rumor about the plot of Brand New Day changing from a street level to a multiverse level story, and then back and forth and back and forth. So my concern of that is, I feel like at some point they're going to have to let some idea go and sit for a while, because Scorpion's out there waiting, we have the symbiote coming in, and then, at some point it seems like they're going to go back to multiversal with Spider-Man, but there's a lot to deal with that, and I don't want them to try and jam pack all of it into one movie if it's not really well thought out.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I feel about it. Because like you said earlier, it feels like this is gonna be like a soft reboot. And honestly, I feel like a kind of just more grounded, like street level, regular Spider-Man movie would be kind of refreshing compared to where it left off at. Just because there was so much that happened in the last movie, the last time that we've seen Peter Parker and Spider-Man and all that, that I just feel like throwing a bunch of like multiversal stuff at us and all that would be like a lot for where he is in his story. And I think, like you said, ideally with like everything that happened to him and stuff and his emotions, and he's probably having a hard time, the ideal time to have him be symbiote Spider-Man would be probably now.
Yeah.
So I think a more grounded Spider-Man movie with maybe the symbiote Spider-Man and all that would be, the best way. But also, there has been a lot of people talking about it, and like the word on the street is that we're gonna have live action Miles and everything coming here soon, which would be
which I forget about a lot because he's Spider-Verse, but yeah.
Yeah, I think I think live action Miles would be cool, and also with the Secret War movie coming up, down the line a little bit, but with Secret Wars and all that, I mean, Miles is a big part of that. So I feel like we're gonna probably have to have him sometime.
Well, another thing that's interesting too is, Spider-Man in the MCU was always very, or at least while Iron Man was still alive, was very close with Iron Man, and like he was kind of like that father figure to him. So whatever the plan is with Robert Downey Jr. coming in as Doom, and then there's also the possibility that Spider-Man will go into Secret Wars with the symbiote. So it could be a thing at the end of Brand New Day where that's when he'll get the symbiote suit and then he'll show up in Secret Wars with that. But that also adds on to a very opportune time for him to have the symbiote is when he comes back against who he'll recognize as Iron Man, but sees him as a villain who is destroying and smashing multiverses together. And based on what some of the rumored things we have to expect in Doomsday and everything, Doom is not going to be a good guy. Like, he has to be a menacing villain to take on the ever-growing list of cast members for these movies. So I think once Secret Wars comes around, and will probably be bigger than Doomsday, Spider-Man being up front and center against Doom would be not only like very cool to see, but I feel like almost natural. Like that seems like the natural next step for that.
Yep.
One more thing I was gonna ask you about is in terms of Spider-Man Noir or MCU Spider-Man or Spider-Verse, I just wanted to ask, like, what are some villains you'd want to see show up in any of those projects, or who will you want to be the main villains, mostly in like Noir and Brand New Day?
Yeah. So with Noir, I definitely want to see the Noir-verse Vulture, just because for Noir that's pretty iconic. Like, he, well, if I remember right, that's how like Spider-Man Noir got like his start, is because Vulture ate like his family or something.
Yeah, I think Vulture ate Uncle Ben.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I mean, that is definitely what I want to see from the Noir project. And then as for like the Spider-Verse stuff, I think they just need to pick up right where they left off with the crazy powerful Spot, and then the alternate Miles Prowler.
Oh yeah.
And everything like that.
Yeah, they got a lot. They got a lot going into that too.
And then I think for the MCU Spider-Man, Brand New Day, I would probably like to just see, just some of the regular villains, loose ends, and stuff that we haven't really seen yet. So, like Scorpion and all that. And then, just some more normal, maybe some like street villains, like maybe some Rhino action would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Just anybody like that.
I think for Brand New Day, I feel like this is another thing. This movie has had so many rumors already, and I feel like the suspected villain has changed a lot of times already.
Mm-hmm.
So, for a while, people thought it'd be Kingpin. I don't think it's going to end up being Kingpin, but Scorpion, it's about time that we see. And I think Scorpion as a Spider-Man villain, it's about time that he gets a live-action debut. But there's also been the talks of Mr. Negative showing up, and I think I saw like Chameleon and Black Cat were also rumored for it.
Yeah.
Two kind of different villains from what Tom Holland's faced so far.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like Chameleon would be kind of cool.
It'd be very different. I don't think there hasn't been a live action Spider-Man villain that would have to be more. Well, I guess Mysterio was kind of, you have to outsmart him rather than fight him, but definitely with Chameleon.
Yeah.
His best tactic against Spider-Man is outsmarting and manipulating him instead of just straight fighting him. So, yeah.
I think if it is what we were talking about earlier, with like the more like street level kind of stuff, it would be kind of cool to have it be Mr. Negative, just because that's more of like a mob bossy kind of thing, you know what I mean? So then, I think that would be kind of cool, but I'd be down for anybody. I just want more Spider-Man content.
I was thinking about this the other day too. There's like, people have like their tier lists of Spider-Man movies, but I feel like across the board there haven't been any Spider-Man movies which are downright awful.
Yeah.
Like, there's definitely some that are less than perfect, but I feel like with time each of them have aged for the most part kind of better.
Yeah.
So I think that's just something I was thinking of, but I was like, all right, we haven't gotten any outright terrible movies yet from Spider-Man, and I don't think that's going to happen with Brand New Day.
Mm-mm.
And then just one more thing I'll say about Brand New Day, which I'm very excited for, is they hired for this movie the same combat coordinator that they had doing Shang-Chi.
Mm-hmm.
And the fight scenes in that, at least the hand-to-hand combat fight scenes in that movie were awesome. So to see Spider-Man in that kind of combat scenarios will be really cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be kind of sick.
Yeah. All right, well, I think unless you have anything more you want to add?
No, I think that about wraps it up for the old Spidey boy.
Alrighty. Well, this has been the Mild Opinion Podcast, episode 11. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.